8th graders, we're going to be getting ready for a test. And so that's why I went back to lesson 2.1. To review with you what we've covered so far and to help you get ready. You're going to do a review assignment for tomorrow, which will be graded. We'll go through the review assignment together, and then you'll take your test on Friday. Okay? So this chapter started with showing you how to add opposites, so that when we're using that to solve equations, you know where that comes from. Okay? It was a whole lesson on adding. This is rules for adding positive and negative numbers. Here's what it means. If you have two negative numbers, you add their absolute values. That's what AV stands for. You add their absolute values and use the sign given. So if it's, do you know what absolute value means?
I think so. I think I did know, but I kind of forgot. Okay.
The absolute value of a number, then it's written in these bars.
Oh, yeah.
That means absolute value.
Yeah.
And that refers to the distance that this number is on a number line from 0. This is 2 spaces from 0. -2 is 2 spaces from 0. +2 is 2 spaces from 0. So these have the same absolute value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, since both of these are negative, if you add their absolute values, you get the answer. But because they're negative, it is more negative. Okay? To simplify this, we would say if they have the same sign, you can just add the digits and use the sign given. Okay? The same is true for variable expressions, or variable terms. -2n plus -3n is -5n. Okay? Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
If they have different signs, then you have to subtract their absolute values. And that's where the absolute value concept comes in more, is more practical. It is more helpful, I should say. Okay? If you have -10 plus 5, then to find the answer, you'd use 10 minus 5, which equals 5, and then use the sign of the bigger absolute value. Since -10 is 10 spaces from 0, and 5 is only 5 spaces from 0, then we'd use the negative sign. Right? Look at this one. To get the answer to 70 plus -110, you'd have to do 110 minus 70 to find the difference, but then use the negative sign of the -110, because that one is bigger. That one has a bigger absolute value. That's farther away from 0, right?
Wouldn't the problem be flipped, and so it would be -110 and 70?
No. When you're finding the difference, you have to take the bigger absolute value minus the smaller absolute value.
Right, but it looks like
So the difference is 40, isn't it? But the
Okay,
answer is -40.
so why not just put the negative sign up by 110?
Because if you write it this way, Dylan, it's a good question. If you write it this way, how do you do that problem?
You add
0, 6, 1?
yeah, math.
Yay, math. Is that 0 minus 0, 7 minus 1?
Well, could you just do it, the 110 over 70 and then just do the problem from the underside? Like,
Why not just write it this way? You mean work up? So like 0 minus 0, 1 minus 7 that way?
well, you take out the 100 and make it
It's
90.
just, yeah, it's just simpler to write it this way and then use this negative sign, okay?
I like more.
All right, so then in fractions, you have to use common denominators, meaning that if we have 4/5 plus 2/15, we can't add these two together until their denominators are the same, right? So then you have to convert this to a fraction that's in 15ths rather than fifths. By multiplying the denominator by 3, you get 15. If you multiply the denominator by 3, you have to multiply the numerator by 3 to get 12. And then you can add the pieces. The top number is the number of pieces, right? 12 out of 15 plus 2 out of 15. 14 out of 15. Okay? The matrix. Do you remember seeing this?
Nope, wasn't like back then.
A matrix is a set of numbers in a group like this. And you can add or subtract groups of numbers this way by getting the answer. So look at this, 7 plus -8. You would use the operation that's given, and you'd follow that to the same spot on the other matrix. 7 plus -8. -8 plus 9.4. -12 plus -9. And 6.2 plus 17. That's how a matrix works. You go to use the number in the same spot on the other one. Okay? And then more adding fractions. I guess we already did that. Subtracting fractions, you have to remember to find or use the bigger absolute value minus the smaller absolute value. Find the answer. Then we went on to 2, subtracting positive and negative numbers, where you insert a plus sign in front of the minus sign. Nod your head if you're with me on this. Understand how to do this? Right? Insert a plus sign in front of the minus sign. If it's 2 minuses in a row, you make it just plus. So -6 minus -8 is really -6 plus 8. And in 2-3, we did multiplying and dividing. The same sign makes it positive. 2 negatives, or an even number of negative numbers, make it positive. An odd number of negative signs make it negative. So -2 to the third power in parentheses makes it negative, doesn't it? -1 times a number makes its opposite. Then, in lesson 2-3, we did some evaluating positive and negative expressions. We insert the number in parentheses, right? And then, in lesson 2-3, powers of negative numbers. So we did powers of 3 to the 4th power. And the thing that you have to remember here is that if there's a negative sign, like this, but it's outside of the parentheses, or there are no parentheses, the negative sign goes at the end. This is just like doing -1 times 3 to the 4th power. It doesn't go with the -3. Like this one does. -4 squared is in parentheses, right? And so both the negative and the 4 are squared to make it positive. But this one, only the 4 is squared. So this is a -4 squared, -16. Right? Nod your head if you're with me. Understand this? Review, okay. Good. Lesson 2-3, we also worked on dividing with negative numbers. And dividing fractions, you have to flip the fraction and multiply by its reciprocal. So you don't do 2/5 divided by 3/10. You change it to 2/5 times 10/3. And then find the answer. How did we change fractions to mixed numbers before dividing? Because you have to have a fraction times a fraction when you're multiplying. So if the first number is a mixed number, you have to change it to fraction form. Do you know how to do that? Nod your head. You know how to change it to fraction form. Good. And then multiply the first fraction by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So look at this example. We started with 2.5 divided by 1/4. We changed 2.5 to 5/2 and changed 1/4 to 4/1 and then multiplied them to get 10. Okay? With me so far? You follow this? You understand this? Nod your head if you understand, so I know that we can move on. Okay. Sort of. And then, we talked about reciprocals. We talked about the properties of numbers. And that's where we're going to stop for this chapter. And get ready for a test. Okay? Commutative property, you can switch the numbers and get the same answer. Associative property means that you can do the operation in a different order. You can do the second two numbers and then add the third number. Or the first number, I should say. Okay. And then the property of reciprocals, we talked about those. Any questions? All right. So that'll help you get ready for your test drive.
What